Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys, my name is Alfiatur Rahmania and my student number 093. And in here I want to explain about cross-cultural pragmatics. Okay, what is cross-cultural pragmatics? It is a field of study that concerns itself with how language acquire meaning, though context, and though its socio-cultural embedding. Jadi, pragmatik lintas budaya adalah bidang studi yang memperlihatkan bagaimana makna melalui konteks itu dan melalui penanaman sosiokultural atau budayanya. Casper and Blum-Kulka 1993 defined CCP or Sociocultural Pragmatics as the study of linguistic act by language users from different culture background. CCP looked at issues outside the classroom and continental on an environment in which participants are not learning only in the classroom but are full member of the target language. Jadi menurut pendapat Casper dan Blum-Kulka ini mendefinisikan CCP sebagai studi tentang tindakan linguistik oleh pengguna bahasa dari latar belakang yang berbeda. CCP juga melihat isu-isu di luar kelas dan berkonsentrasi pada lingkungan, di mana peserta tidak hanya belajar di dalam kelas, tetapi mereka juga mengikuti komunitas bahasa target tersebut. Okay, for example, if someone working business in Europe speak continental English with pride, with a variety of accent from their first language, as an accent from, for example, Swedish, German, Dutch, Hungarian, or Italy. Jadi, seperti contoh, ada seseorang yang bekerja pada contohnya bidang bisnis di Eropa. Mereka berbicara bahasa Inggris kontinental dengan perasaan yang bangga dengan berbagai aksen dari bahasa pertama mereka. Seperti misal mereka berasal dari Swedia, mereka memakai aksen yang ada di Swedia, seperti itu. Okay, next, value and belief. CCP investigates how human behavior which is influenced by participants. Okay, next, value and belief. CCP investigates how human behavior which is influenced by participants. Underlying values and beliefs. It's translated into example of the language used. Most pragmatic researchers have been of the view that culture does play a role in language behavior. The values and beliefs of the culture, though model are embedded in the conversation, but at the micro and macro level. Jadi cross-cultural pragmatic ini menyelidiki bagaimana perilaku manusia yang dipengaruhi oleh nilai dan keyakinan yang mendasari partisipan diterjemahkan ke dalam contoh bahasa yang digunakan. Sebagian besar peneliti pragmatik juga berpandangan bahwa budaya memang berperan sangat penting dalam perilaku bahasa. Nilai dan keyakinan model pemikiran budayanya tertanam dalam percakapan baik itu tingkat mikro maupun makro. Maksudnya percakapan baik itu lingkup yang kecil maupun besar, seperti itu.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Latifatul Aulia. My student number is 095. In here, I want to explain to you about the next explanation in this presentation. The next is pragmatics failure. According to Thomas, 1983, the inability to interpret intended meaning may be due to regional, ethnic, gender, and class difference within a community and across cultural boundaries. Jadi, pragmatic failure adalah kesalahan dalam memahami penggunaan bahasa. Hal ini berkaitan dengan kesalahan yang gagal memenuhi komunikasi karena tidak sesuai ekspresi atau gaya yang tidak sesuai. Kind of pragmatic failure is two. The first is pragmalinguistic failure and the second is sociolinguistic failure. The first is pragmalinguistic failure. According to Thomas, 1995, pragmalinguistic failure, which occurs when the pragmatic force mapped by S onto a given utterance is systematically different from the force most frequently assigned to it by native speakers of the target language, or when speech act strategies are inappropriately transferred from native to learners. And the second is sociopragmatic failure. Sociopragmatic failure ini mengacu pada kesalahan dalam mengekspresikan yang disebabkan oleh kurangnya pengetahuan atau mengabaikan perbedaan latar belakang budaya antara dua negara. Akar dari sociopragmatic failure terletak pada orang-orang yang memiliki perbedaan pendapat mengenai perilaku sosial yang tepat. Sociopragmatic failure refers to faults in expressing by a lack of knowledge, ignoring cultural background difference between the two countries. The root of sociopragmatic failure lies in people who have different opinions on behavior the right social. First, the original designation of pragmalinguistic and sociopragmatic types of failure, assumed to be a dichotomy where a receiver could distinguish one from the other. Confidence is not tenable as, in fact, both categories involve underlying perception of sociocultural norms. When ordering food in a restaurant, whether one can use a direct imperative, call the waiters your sister, or use politeness markers relates to dimension of power, social distance, and how service personnel are viewed in different countries. In effect, the term pragmatic failure may no longer be appropriate to describe language use that does not adhere to native speakers' language norms for the communication of pragmatics meaning. A preferable term may be infelicitous or just inappropriate. It is clear that a more inclusive perspective is required. New approaches have been evolving within pragmatics as more and more studies focus on situated linguistic and interactional practice to examine how sociocultural contextual features influence comprehension and production of pragmatics meaning. And then a background on Cross-Cultural Speech Act. Since the 1960s, anecdotal evidence has been replaced by empirical studies on the transfer of Speech Act realizations from one cultural and linguistic background to another. The goal of the research has been to apply the findings to avoid stereotyping and to contribute to the teaching of pragmatic competence of second or foreign language learners. Since 1980, CCP Speech Act studies have concentrated on the following: apologies, refusals, rejections, compliments, complaints, and then requests, expression of gratitude, disagreement, and chastisement, giving, embracing information, and correction. This list is undoubtedly not exhaustive or definitive. Research in CCP has addressed a wide variety of issues related to speech act realization, such as variation in level of directness, gender differences, pragmatics transfer, communication strategies, comprehension and production difference, conventional routines, and formulaic language. The next section, some representative studies by scholars of other languages often represented in CCP research until recently are reviewed. Next is listener behavior. Mrs. Annie says active listening is what gives you those moments. How do you do that? The first is take ownership of the situation. It is only way to avoid becoming the victim of your own blind spots. Try to recognize your own blind spots before you judge and evaluate others. Ask yourself, is there something in what this person is saying that I'm not understanding? There's probably is. And the next is ask question. Ask the person you are listening to what they mean. What's their opinion on the issue? How does this appear to them? And the next is use checking and phrase strategies and framing strategies. First, check whether your assumption is true. Maybe it is, but there could be more than you think. Then frame your question in a way that avoid putting your boss or employee or colleague or spouse on the defensive. And then don't rationalize or screen their responses. Ask yourself whether you are having a dialogue. If you are really listening actively, it means you are learning something about other person's perspective that you never thought of before. The next is don't get the defensive yourself. What you said hurt me. It's not a good way to get honest feedback. Take ownership of your assumption with a praise like, I made an assumption about what you say to me. I just want to check and see if that what you really mean. And the last one is if you need to remind yourself about why it's so important to check your assumption, ask yourself some simple question like what is my long-term commitment here? Do I want to make this relationship work? Okay, I think that is explanation for me. I'm sorry if many mistake in my pronunciation or my words. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Constructive rhetoric studies with implication for the ESL writing classroom begins with Robert Complex study of some 600 L2 students' essays. This work was exploratory and to a degree more intuitive and scientific, but valuable in establishing constructive rhetoric as a new field of inquiry. It has also created controversy. Kaplan diagrams of rhetorical partners have been widely reported, appearing even in ESL composition textbooks. Indeed, it is in L2 writing classes that contrastive rhetoric work has the greatest potential practical application. The diagram with their implication in regard to partners of written discourse readily place contrastive rhetoric into the Saren's traditional approach to teaching ESL writing. But contrastive rhetoric has not found much favor with those who adopt a process orientation to teaching writing. Proponents of process approaches maintain that contrastive rhetoric research examines the product only, detaching it from and ignoring both the contrastive rhetorical context from which the L2 writers emerge and the process these writers may have gone through to produce a text. Furthermore, as a result of this research orientation toward the project, when the findings of contrastive rhetoric have been applied to L2 writing, they have almost by definition been prescriptive. In English, we write like this: choose who would write well in English must look at this. Well, partners and imitate it. Modern contractive rhetoric research helping to reconcile rhetoric, contractive rhetoric to teaching composition insists perhaps somewhat defensively the text-oriented research does not equal product-oriented writing introspection. Well, that may be the case in practice. The diagram have in fact been used to justify prescriptive approaches to teaching writing. Thank you.